Okay, so we are here, Stickers and Scuffs podcast, also the NASCAR Pinty Series fan group. Um, GP3R is officially over, and obviously we have had one heck of an event once again. Man, Three Rivers is easily the best event that the NASCAR Pinty Series puts on. I think you could say that Jukasa and Toronto will also CTMP all kind of compete for that reign, but easily the event is one of the best. It was an event today that was much better than what we saw for the NASCAR Cup Series, a road and street course event that did not have calamity at every corner. Rather or not, it was a very clean race. There was a couple of spins, a bit of contact, some aggressiveness, but at the end of the day, there was not and hasn't been a ton of real chaos. The entire race itself was extended to 60 laps from the typical 50. 60 laps meant that you had to make a pit stop. Now, that didn't really mean much in the end because strategy didn't really come into play. As much as we want to wish it was going to be a strategy race, it really didn't seem to make any difference when drivers made their pit stop because it was just for fuel, it wasn't for tires. The tires themselves seem to hold up pretty well around the Three Rivers circuit. And I'll tell you one thing about the field. Unlike Sunset, this field was very, very, very spread out through the entire event. There was very evidently cars that were not close to the pace that what we saw up front. Unfortunate because at Sunset, we didn't have that. There was a lot of closeness within the field. All 18 cars at Sunset Speedway were very close, whereas, there's a good amount of cars that were really off the pace here today. Alex Tagliani in the 22 Racing Rona Viagra car gets the victory. And Alex has been somebody that has kind of struggled in the last couple of seasons for consistency. While he has been driving this number 18 for quite a while, we have to really look back and see, yeah, he's a three-time winner, but 2017, 2018 is when he last won on Three Rivers. And we have to go back really and kind of look at his situation. Okay. Didn't get a win in the six event, session last year. He didn't make the first two events. And, his championship runs, while 2018 was his most dominant, finishing second in the championship, he's not really known as a guy that gets a lot of wins throughout the season. So the fact that he's got a win 3 races in to the 2021 championship is extremely exciting. He hasn't really slowed down at 47 years old. You would have thought that maybe Tag would have had a little less momentum, especially with his busy offseason with his e-karting facility. However, that's not been the case. He started off very strong in 2021, 3 top 10s to start the season. Now, remember, if you put that in perspective, okay, if you go back to 2019, he had only 8 top 10s through 13 races. He's already got 3 in the first 3 races. That's a very, very solid start to the championship season. And not only that, is he's not alone. His teammate Trayton Lapsovich is right up there in points with him. So we know that 22 Racing seems to be back. When we first started the event, it was 22 Racing up front along with LP Dumoulin. Marc-Antoine Cameron in the 22 was the car on the outside pole and looked very strong in completely different contrast and different paint than we saw him at Sunset. Instead of the all black with a little bit of red, we saw a very nice, colorful red and white and black car. It was a beautiful looking ride, but unfortunately, they had problems right away. It sounds like a transmission faulty, and 2 days in a row. Unfortunately, the dirt modified race, he was out in the first corner, and Marc-Antoine Cameron's, man, his luck just hasn't been what he really was hoping for. And it just goes to show that no matter what you do, even if you are that guy, with funding, you're in a top ride, it doesn't mean that you're going to have success right off the bat. and Mark Antoine Cameron did not. That was not what happened. So unfortunately for 22 Racing, while they had a really good run for two of their cars, Mark Antoine had a tough run and finished last. Now, he wasn't the only one to have trouble in this race. Unfortunately, what we saw once again was DJ Kennington's cars pretty good. Now, if you're not familiar, Rick Ware Racing, that whole effort with Alex Gannett and Andrew Ranger, that is a effort with DJ Kennington. Now, unfortunately, 2 weeks in a row, the second race at Sunset Speedway and then here at Trois Rivières, unfortunately, Andrew Ranger once again has a mechanical issue that takes him out of the race. He spun all by himself, and that's when Andrew Ranger spins out by himself, that's when you know there was something wrong with the car. It's not something that you would typically see from him. But it wasn't the worst, unfortunately. There were some teams that had even worse struggles. We're talking White Motorsports. From the highest of highs, 2 wins with Rafael Lessard at Sunset Speedway to what they had was an awful weekend with all 4 of their cars. Mark Dilley had mechanical problems with the carburetor. Thank you, Faith Dilley, who let me know kind of what the situation was there. Right off the bat, they didn't even mention it on the broadcast. It happened so fast. Then as soon as that happens, Rafael Lessard is off track, and he went off track a couple of times. They had troubles with the car. He was 9 laps down, had a terrible, terrible race. TJ Renamato, who had problems in qualifying, he backed it into the tire wall very early in his qualifying, mind you. He also struggled for speed, was laps down really early. And then their 4th car, the 19 of JF LeBerge, he also was off track twice and then parked it after only a couple of laps as well. So it was a very, very tough race for White Motorsports after they just dominated Sunset Speedway with 2 wins. So clearly the parity is back. The other thing I think we can talk about is there wasn't a driver that did go out and just straight out dominate. Yes, we did get Alex Tagliani being very, very good the entire race. But at the end of the day, he didn't go out and straight dominate because Kevin Lacroix was up there and he had to fight back and get the lead back from Kevin. You also had LP Dumoulin up there along with his brother JF. And I was really bummed for JF because I felt that he was the best of the best today. I think he was actually the fastest car, but just could not get by Kevin Lacroix in that 74. So when we take a look at kind of the results from this season, you can't really compare Sunset Speedway to the event at GP3R because they're completely different events. You have different drivers. But let's take a look at the results here. Mark Antoine Cameron, unfortunately, only 9 laps in this race. It's more than he got in the sportsman division by only not even finishing 1 lap. He was out in the first corner. JF LeBerge, only 10 laps. Not sure what the actual issue was with the 19, but he was out. And then one of the teams that we look forward to seeing and being very strong, they struggled as well. That being the team of Ed Hackinson Racing. All 3 of their cars kind of just hung out in the middle of the pack. Their lead car, Brett Taylor, was able to get up into the top 10, but then unfortunately they had some sort of a failure. Again, not sure what the exact issue was. He stopped out on track, only 28 laps done out of 60. So that's a tough race for him. Rookie Sam Fellows running for Jim Bray and Mike Kerb in the 98. He got an opportunity to run this race, but they had problems with that car right off the bat. And so unfortunately, the 98 had to pull off for a bit. He did finish the race, but was only able to complete 38 of the, 37 of the 60 laps. So we talked about Andrew Ranger. Well, when he has brake problems, it's a little, important to make sure they get that resolved. He wasn't able to finish the race. So the 51, once again, struggling with the new 51. Maybe he's got to switch back to the 27, Rick. I'm just saying that was his number. We all know him for his number 27. Very difficult to see the Miles for Migraine car have some difficulties once again. TJ Renamato finishes in 18th place. He had an awful race. It was not fun for him or for his teammate Mark Dilley in the 64. Mechanical problems really for both of them. Alex Gannett had some contact into the tire barrier, but we're not sure if it was, again, that was a mechanical issue that caused it. The live stream, there was very little that they could actually show you because it was an RDS feed. It wasn't Dave Bradley, who did the broadcast, was using their footage, but didn't have control over what he was seeing. So it's a little bit different to be able to if there's an issue, go back and get that. But Gannett did not finish either. That 52 it was a tough race for both the Rick Ware cars. And then the man who I thought was extremely impressive, and I think we expected him to be impressive, Kyle Marcelli in the number 7 for Dave Jacobs. It was a solid race for him. He made his way up past DJ Kennington with a couple obstacles. He's running up in I believe 5th or 6th place, and then the car just it looked as if they lost an axle, and unfortunately that brought out the last caution flag. So Kyle Marcelli unable to finish his first event, but was very, very impressive. Now for the guys who, again, we did see finish the race. They were on track. Rafael Lessard, he did get back out there in the Napa Auto Parts number 80. I really hope, and we'll discuss this a little bit more in the next little bit. I really hope that Rafael Lessard is able to finish the season. I know there's not talk of plans for him for the rest of the season, but the fact that they brought 4 cars out to this event maybe leads to the fact that they could potentially have 4 cars if, say, Donald Teach does want to get back behind the wheel before the end of this season. I think when we go to the point standings, we'll talk about it a little bit further, but he's not out of it. Despite having an awful race, Rafael Lessard still finished 14th. He wasn't last, and he battled, and that team battled the entire weekend. Jocelyn Fecto finishes in 13th place. I'd have to check, but I think that might be one of his better finishes, despite having a spin in the number 77. He had some new sponsorship on that 77 as well. So it was really nice to see that for him. He doesn't make many starts in the series, so the fact that he was able to get a good result. Same with Ray Jr. Cornamash or Ray Cornamash Jr. It's really hard to know what you're supposed to say because broadcast was saying it 2 different ways. But Ray Cornamash, again, coming back to the series for the first time in a long time. He's the 2012 most popular driver in the series, and beautiful looking car, Moana right on the hood. And he did finish 2 laps down. His speed just wasn't there, and that's kind of typical for him. He doesn't typically run up near the front, but the fact is he did finish 12th, and we'd have to check. Again, I don't know what his best result was in the past, but I feel like that was pretty good. Larry Jackson will tell you that he's not really a road course racer, but he did very well despite having some issues earlier in the weekend, and Larry finishes in 11th place. Probably would have hoped for a top 10, but the fact is Larry's doing quite well to start this season. And this one is a long time coming. I kind of feel like he's been close. And yesterday in the Sportsman race, he was flying. He was up into 2nd place before he got punted. But Dexter Stacy, driving the Bullies Truck Stop 92, one of the things I guess we can kind of say about Dexter is that he's kind of had a hard go of it. And while last year it took him 6 races, he got 3 top 10s. There was only a couple cars in each race. There was only about 13. So it was a little easy to get a top 10 last year. But in a field of 23 cars, the most that we've seen in a long time, the fact that Dexter is he's got a top 10, that's a great start to the season for him in the 92. He had a horrible start at Sunset Speedway. He crashed out in 60 laps in the first race and didn't even get out for the second race. So this is a really good rebound for that 92 team. He leads the EHR charge, which I don't know many people would have expected from him. Luke Lesage, I don't know much about Luke, but obviously driving that number 25, it's his own car. Obviously it's a little interesting because he has a Toyota sponsorship, but he drove a Chevy. So we really got to get Toyota up into this series and help out some of the teams. Hopefully, attract a little bit more sponsorship in some teams. That would be excellent for this series. The fact we've got Mike Curb and Rick Ware is a good sign. Hopefully, we'll be able to get a bit more interest from some of the race teams down south. Another rookie, Louis-Philippe Montour, making his very first start, and this is a partnership really that works great with Pinty's. Pinty's has sauces for their foods, and Kamloops, which is the sponsor that was on the 07, it's family business from Louis-Philippe, and they partnered with Pinty's, so why not be on a race car? And they are. An excellent run for Simon Dion Vienne, finishing in 7th place in the number 37. That's excellent for him. He hasn't been in the series in over a year. The fact that he was able to finish 7th, that's a great run for him. So very happy for Simone in the Castrol number 37 Ford. An interesting battle for DJ Kennington during this race. DJ was not somebody I think we expected to do overly great on the road courses. The fact that he was able to beat a lot of the road course and ringers, or at least stay close within them, very telling. Something about this season, he's been the leader of the team so far. He's the one that's gotten the finishes, aside from the very first race where he had a mechanical failure, fuel pump, that died on them very early in that race. Second, and then coming back and finishing in 6th place is a very solid effort for DJ Kennington. And remember, the road course events are a little bit different for him. It's not his forte, but he has won. Excuse me, a long day. LP Dumoulin, pole sitter. Not sure what happened to the 47 car, but he just seemed to kind of not have it midway through the race. He started out very strong, but it was very clear that his brother's car was the better of the two. And, he settled for 5th place, but that's not where he wanted. One of the biggest movers and one of the best performances of today was Trayton Lapsovich, the rookie, in his very first road course effort, his very first time at GP3R. He finishes in 4th place. He was battling with Kevin Lacroix on that last lap for the podium. Wasn't able to get it. I don't know if he got into him a little bit. It looked like maybe there was some contact, but the camera cut away, so we weren't able to see it. Trayton, if you didn't know, took a helicopter ride from Trois-Rivières to Sunset Speedway in Barrie, Ontario yesterday to compete in the APC late model race. Then they drove during the night back to Three Rivers, where he competed today, and to get a 4th place after that. Trayton Lapsovich, if not for a couple of unfortunate spins, very well could be in the points lead and could have had 2 wins this season already. Very impressive run for the young gun in the number 20 for 22 Racing. Now, Kevin Lacroix on that number 74 got up front. He got up front several times, but the car just seemed to go away. And I don't know if he just used up the general tires and he was holding on for dear life at the very end. Contact with LP Dumoulin, and he paid him right back. Kevin Lacroix doesn't take that. He gives it right back. Obviously, that's a lot of controversy. A lot of people that don't particularly like Kevin Lacroix, you don't have to. This is part of racing. It's excitement. It's rivalries. It is what racing is about. I would just obviously ask that people keep it respectful and respectfulness. The drivers are dealing with their stuff on track. You don't need to be participating with it off the track. JF Dumoulin, 2nd place, his very best results. He's not got the Spectra Premium color on the car this year, but definitely a good looking 04 car. And he battled back. It seemed like the entire race he was trying to get by Kevin Lacroix or his brother. And at the end of the day was one of the highlights. So I hope that we do get to see JF once again this season. We know kind of it really does depend on the funding situation. I think Circuit iCar is a good bet for him. Where I'm curious is whether or not we see him at the event. Well, clearly, do we see him at the event at Autodrome Chaudier? 2 events there the next day. So dual competition, obviously, with Montour, I would expect Montour is going to run at iCar as well. That would be a great effort to see him there as well, keep our car counts looking quite well. But what can we say about Alex Taglioni? He is now a 3-time winner of the Grand Prix de Trois-Rivières. This one was a lot easier, I think, than other events. Obviously, that last caution made it a little more complicated, but the NASCAR Pinty Series is having its, very great start to the season. Our point standings, 16 markers between Raphael Lessard and LP Dumoulin, and then just 2 to third place, Trayton Lapsovich, 1 back to Alex Taglioni, Alex Gannett in 5th. Interesting enough, Shea Gilman wasn't in this race, yet he is still 6th in the standings. Andrew Ranger is in 7th. That's nuts. But Larry Jackson doing very well in 8th place in the standings. And then we have a 3-way tie in 9th with Mark Dilley, DJ Kennington, and Marc-Antoine Cameron. Brett Taylor in 12th. Kevin Lacroix struggling. He is back in 13th place in the standings. Pete Shepard wasn't in this race. He's 14th. Chantal Kalika, Brent Weller, TJ Renamoto, and Dexter Stacy are your 18 in points. That's as high as we've got it on the list here. Obviously, we want to hear from you guys as to what you thought of the GP3R event. I'm all for 60 laps, but I would love to have 2 events at this racetrack in the future. I think GP3R is a facility that deserves 2 events. I think a Saturday and a Sunday event. There's a reason why this series and GP3R work so well. It's because it's treated like it's a big deal. While when you go to, say, Toronto, while they do have their own headline on the Friday, that's not the headliner. The Indy cars are always going to be the headliner. When you go to some other facilities, yeah, it's treated as a big deal, but they shut this city down for the NASCAR Pinty Series for GP3R. So this event is unlike any other. And what was really nice about this race today is it was clean. You typically do not get a clean race at GP3R. It tends to be a little chaotic, cars wrecking. Today it was chaotic, but not for what the reasons that people would have expected. A lot of mechanical failures were the issues today, not wrecking. There was a lot of mechanical problems. Obviously, that's a little worrisome for when this series goes off to Circuit iCar, because they've got a race at iCar, and then they have 2 events the next day at Autodrome Chaudier. We can expect that to be very fun. That is in not next week. It's the week after, I believe. Yes, it's the 28th and 29th. Obviously, live streaming there as well. Stickers and Scuffs podcast, we are not going to be at those events in Quebec this year, but we do hope to be at the following week's events, which are at CTMP. This is going to put a little bit more stress on those race teams because they've got so many races. They've got 5 races in 2 weeks. That's extremely stressful on the organizations, especially the ones that have a lot of cars. If they have a lot of carnage in those races, it could potentially result in missing races like what we saw for Dexter Stacy. Now, in terms of the championship battle, obviously what we saw today is a great thing for Alex Taglioni because he did win a race, but he's not in the points lead. Raphael Lessard is still in the points lead. So what I was talking about earlier is going to be very interesting to see what happens with the whole 80 team, because Donald Teague, yes, was injured, but he is also the one that brings the sponsorship with Teague Chevrolet. Now, what we don't know, and I don't know if it was made public, was if that Napa sponsorship that we had this weekend for Raphael Lessard could continue for the rest of the season. If it continues and it's for the full season, I say, Donald, thank you very much. I think Donald would want a Teej Chevrolet championship over him coming in. Remember, Donald Teej was only going to be part-time in that 80 car anyways. So maybe they look at that and go, okay, well, maybe we switch it and have Raphael continue in the 80 car if Napa is going to stick with us, and Donald will go to the 19 when JF LeBerge is not racing on the road course events. I mean, that's still a possibility. What it would do is it would help the car counts at those smaller racetracks, at the road courses, straight courses. Yeah, that's typically where you get more cars, but it's those ovals that you need to help those car counts stay above 16 cars. You want to make it a really exciting and fun race with lots of attrition, lots of excitement, lots of passing. Now, where we head next, obviously, is you're going to see more Quebec racers there. What we haven't heard from yet is Matthew Kingsbury. Typically runs with Lacroix's team, runs the number 75. Haven't heard from him. David Michaud, haven't heard from him either. Now, all these other names that we saw this week, are they going to run potentially at Chaudier? Are they going to run potentially at ICAR? Chances are you're going to see some of these names not participate. We know Jocelyn Facto does not typically run ovals. So the 77 is more than likely out. It's not going to run at Chaudier. But I think you can probably expect that we'll see maybe one or two of those names come in. I mean, we've seen in the past that DC Competition has run a third car on the ovals. We saw it with Raphael Lessard. They ran the 07 a couple of years ago where he won. So it's not completely unheard of that will happen. But the reality of the situation is it's going to be really tough to decide what these teams are going to do. Obviously, I'm not a part of the teams. I just kind of try to follow the social media and ask questions if I can. We know at CTMP that there's going to be at least 3 additional cars that are going to be competing at CTMP. We know both Gary Clute and his father, Peter, more than likely. I mean, Gary confirmed that they'll be at CTMP, and then David Thorndike, who typically runs the 67, we can expect him. Obviously, Jim Bray, we know Jim Bray's running the 98 with Sam Bellows. That's happening for the rest of the season. Where we don't know is what's happening with maybe Chantel Kalika. Our episode with Chantel Kalika, our interview with her, is coming out tomorrow on this channel. So make sure you take a look at 7:00 p.m. for that. We don't know what's happening with her. We don't know if we're going to see Jamie Krizik at all. We don't know if we're going to see any of the locals for Delaware. We do know at least one driver appointment that is going to be replacing Mark Dilley at Flamborough. It's Brandon Watson from the APC series. Now, we've already seen how Pete Shepard and how Shea Gemmel did this year as drivers from the APC series, and that was extremely well. So hopefully we will be able to see that 64 having a driver. And then you've always got to wonder typically what the plan is for Rinamato's team. Rinamato and Dilley are older, but they've got a young talent kind of that they could be keeping their eyes on. And I'm wondering if this 64 with Brandon Watson at Flamborough is a one-time deal, or whether or not they're kind of looking at it as a potential lead-in for 2022, where he could potentially take over the 64 if Mark or if he takes over the 2 if they decide to retire. I mean, it would be a very exciting move to bring in a young star like that. Obviously, names like J.R. Fitzpatrick, Matt Pritico, Jake Sheridan, Connor James. These are all names that we see in that APC series. Be very interesting to see whether we see any of those guys come back to this series for next year. Obviously, you've got Kyle Steckley coming up as a prospect for the 22 racing team. So there's a lot of moving parts still. One of the things that we have to watch with this series is when people retire and move on, because we lose the cars. We don't want that this year. We need the momentum. We need the support. So if you can, guys, make sure you do what you can to buy products from the series. You contact those companies, thank them for what they're doing, because it does make a difference. Companies do care that fans are enjoying the product. We need to keep building the series up because we know that there's still struggles for racing in Canada. Racing, especially for the NASCAR Pinty series. We want to make sure that Pinty sees how much the fans appreciate it so that they will re-up and continue to be the primary sponsor of the series. So obviously the 2021 championship is different, okay? We typically wouldn't have races only featured in Ontario and Quebec. So one of the things that they have to look for heading into next season is, okay, what is the schedule going to be like? Are we going to see more of these double headers? And potentially, will we go back out west or will we go out east? There's still options there. You've got Riverside Speedway, we've got Scotia Speed World out east. You also have, obviously, Wine Group and Edmonton. Not sure what the plan is for those ones. So hopefully they'll make those decisions. I think that the series needs to stay centralized to where most of the teams are located for right now, until we can build those car counts a little more successful, build more funding in the series. But I think what we need to do is really expect that these next couple of years are going to be crucial to this series. Okay. As fans, like I said, you've got to do what you can to support this series. So by tuning in and just watching GP3R, that was doing something very, very good for the series. And obviously, I know that they really appreciate it. We want to send, obviously, thank yous to a lot of people for this weekend. Joel Robinson, Dave Bradley, Todd Lewis, everybody at RDS, the city of the city of Trois-Rivières itself, everybody in Quebec, really, for tuning in, for showing up in still what's not the most comfortable of situations. Having to wear a mask at a racetrack isn't the easiest thing. We want to thank the boys from Can Race. Now, if you don't know Can Race, they're a YouTube channel that was dedicated to the NASCAR Pinty series, run by Bryce Turner and Stephen Ellis. They've also had Caitlin Patrick, who now works for NASCAR. They've had Alex Gallagher, who works for Canadian Touring Car Championship. They've had a lot of great people that have come in and out of that series. Obviously, Bryce working with TSN, Steven works at the Hockey News. They're the reason why this channel exists. They're the reason why a lot of people got into the NASCAR Pinty series because of Bryce's coverage. We really, really want to thank them for what they've done. They just wrapped up their final episode, their farewell episode from GP3R. So make sure you guys give them a round of applause and a thank you for all they did, giving some background information as to what the drivers are like. This is what we're trying to do as well on this channel, to try and preserve this series and continue to help it thrive. So if you are new to the channel, thank you so much for watching. We want to extend our welcome for coming in and watching us. You can catch us every week. We do interviews with NASCAR Pinty series and or racing stars from within Canada mostly, but we have also had some American drivers in the Xfinity series that have come on and joined us, media members from both Canada and the United States. We do try to feature some of the small track racing as well in Canada, and that includes the APC series, which you'll see coming up lately. Also, of course, we've got weekly racers. We had Kyle Steckley on the show. We have potentially some other names that people are aware of, including some real good short track names, former NASCAR drivers, late model drivers, Ontario Sportsman Series teams and drivers that have come on and been a guest with us. So if you can, guys, again, share, subscribe, and like. Pass it on to your friends of the NASCAR Pinty series, so that we can continue to expand. We really want to get more companies interested. That's our main goal here, because we want every car out there to have a sponsor and have a sponsor that can take them full-time racing. Obviously, we know names like we said, Gary Clute can't go full-time racing. Chantal Kalika can't go full-time racing. Get those companies interested so that we can have bigger purses and help these race teams make it to the racetracks and have, obviously, competitive cars. So that is our review from GP3R. We hope you guys enjoyed it. It was a fantastic race once again. We will be back in 2 weeks for the events at Circuit iCar, and once again, we are going back to Autodrome Chaudier for 2 races, a doubleheader at Chaudier. We can't believe that they're actually going to do 3 races in 2 days. And then they're coming back the following weekend and doing 2 more at CTMP. And then right after that, they're going to do 2 at Flamborough. So it is going to be a very packed schedule, very busy schedule. The Stickers and Scuffs team is expecting and hoping to go to CTMP for both races, both races at Flamborough Speedway, and then, of course, at Delaware Speedway for the finale. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we are able to, but thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Alex Tagliani wins the Grand Prix de Trois Rivières once again, and is now in the thick of a battle for the championship.